What up, everybody? It's the illuminated Reed Walker, and you're listening to Uncorked with Kit.
Howdy, everybody. This is Kit Osborne. You're listening to Uncorked with Kit, episode 50,000. Fuck it. Who cares? Listen, today is a very special one. This is my conversation with Rob Black, part 1. This is the first time I ever had to split a conversation. It's not because I didn't know how to end one. It's because it was so fucking engaging that it blew my mind. I couldn't stop, and I didn't want it to stop. And then I knew that this is something that I wanted to hear, I wanted to learn from, and then I also wanted everybody else to. For once, I had something in my life that I wasn't being selfish about. Anyway, this conversation meant a lot to me. This is with the guy that created XPW that I watched when I was 9 years old, and then I got to wrestle for a couple days prior to this conversation. We hit it off immediately, and then when I asked him to be on my podcast, he agreed, and he said, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. Easy to work with, easy to schedule, all that bullshit. And then I came to realize that, man, he doesn't do podcasts, and he said it to me himself. So I don't do these. I have my own, and then that's it. So he talks about whatever he wants, not what people ask him. So all the topics that I hit, and every question that I had was better than the last in this conversation. I cut it off right at the right point, and it's definitely going to make you guys pretty interested, and I hope it makes you question what the fuck we're about to leave out. But it involves prison. And anyway, for me, I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay. I'm doing a little bit better every day. That wasn't intended to rhyme, but I am. Um, I've definitely had that concern of being losing stock, essentially. When you leave a business for 3 months because of an injury, it doesn't matter what kind of support you have. Of course, you guys keep me rolling. You guys kept me alive. I'm not just going, holy shit, what the fuck am I fighting for type of questions I'm asking myself, but I'm not. And ultimately, everything that you guys did for me, every time you guys reached out, the thousands of fucking emails that I got, or DMs that I got, were crazy, and it's not something that I notice, or that I would think would happen, rather, because that doesn't happen to me. It always feels like nothing good ever fucking happens to Kid Osborne. But you guys were there for me for those 3 months, 2 months of me just being fucking bedridden, which I can't complain compared to anybody else. People that have it worse. But for me, it was really hard. And, when I had that comeback match, and, obviously it wasn't the way that I wanted it to be, up until now, things were rough. And it gets hard. But I have to say thank you to all of you that really got to me to that point. And then from that point up until now, I've been on my own. No thanks to you fuckers. But god damn it, I'm making it. And I'm watching a slow build for me. And that's all I can ever ask for, But all I can ever say is the more that you guys support, the more you'll see me, the more you'll hate me, the more that I can fuck with you, And that's all that matters. But anyway, regardless of all that bullshit about my real life, me and wrestling, Kid Osborne, never say die attitude bullshit. Listen, This is my really, really motherfucking good conversation with XPW owner Rob Black, part 1.
Rob Black, how are you, man? Thanks for joining me.
I'm doing very well. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I mean, I'm doing better now. I was excited for this. I mean, you know, I was I listened to you on your podcast on my way to the show, on the way to XPW a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I need this guy on mine. Like, I mean, you're fucking wild.
Well, listen, I don't do these a lot. My wife goes, how did you, why are you doing this? Like, how did this happen? How did you get convinced into doing this? And I just kind of looked at her. She goes, because he worked for you and you're going to, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. Sure. Yeah. I just don't do these because I have my own shit.
Yeah.
I feel that if you want to hear me, if you want to hear me talk, if you want to hear stuff that you're going to ask me, then listen to my show. And I've been doing this type of stuff for 20 some odd years. And it's like, it's like whatever. Like, let's put it this way. Chris Kloss, who is like the voice of XPW, he's got a podcast type of thing where it's the voice of XPW, and he and whatever, all the XP. He's done everybody, and he finally got me to do it probably 2 months ago, and I just never did it. So I did, and then I just felt like, all right, I'll do it. So yeah, I just don't do them.
I mean, it's the same with me. Like, I mean, anytime I get asked to do them, one, I know that I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going to be putting like 2 hours by, because if it's going to be some Mark fan or whatever, they don't even have questions. They just think that it's just going to flow. Like, there's no topics or anything. They just say, hey, remember, when you did this? And then I go, yeah, I do. But there's just no context to it, at all. And then you're just ending up, it's like almost just answering a fan on Facebook that just says, hey, nonstop. And then if you finally respond, they just go, holy shit, I didn't know you were going to respond. And then that's it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, that, and then also people ask the same questions, and then you're just ending up saying the same thing. And it just becomes a routine. And that shit's not fun, So, I mean, that's why it's like you just have some topics, and it's like I throw them at you so you have some idea. I'm not just throwing you this Hail Mary, and then you just go, dude, why would you think I'd want to bring that up? But
why was, yeah. But you know what? I'm cool. I'm all right. I'm cool. I'm cool. No,
Sure.
Whatever. Let's, like I said, I don't do them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more apt to do them for people that
work for you,
or that I'm friends with. So yeah, whatever. Let's fucking do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that it was pretty easy to convince you to do it. I think all I did was just text you once, but
that's why I was like, yeah.
Wish there was a whole story behind it, like I had to drive all the way to Rochester, go to his house, I will tell you this though.
Yeah, that would have been a good story though.
I know. I could have lied, it's wrestling. But I had to tell you. So, the premise of this show is Uncorked with Kit, and what I do is I buy a bottle of wine, sometimes, usually a cheap bottle of wine, and I'll see something at the store that I think will just like remind me of, the person that I'm interviewing. So today, which I wanted to say, I almost pulled a you, like forgetting the fucking ref, at your show, or a cord. And I just almost started driving home without any wine or anything at all. And I'm going, shit, So I'm glad that, we could have done this a little later. But the wine I got today is called Single Post Riesling. And the reason why I saw that one is because I feel like with you, man, and whether it's back in the early 2000s or it could be now, I feel like you're probably one single post from everybody either A, loving you to death, or most likely B, just, wow, that guy is a piece of shit and I don't fucking like him.
Well,
you get judged more.
Well, I think I'm one of I'm one of those people, and I mean, you get them in every, rather it's wrestling, rather it's music, rather it's acting, politics, whatever. There's just people where it's kind of baked in the cake, and I think after all these years, I've been a personality since 95, 96, and you either love me or hate me. But there's nothing that is new. So it's kind of baked in the cake. So if I say something ridiculous, nobody goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said that." If you don't like me, you're like, "Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, go figure." And if you do like me, you're like, "Yeah, that's funny," or that's part of the shtick. So,
right.
Well,
I mean, it's like you could, let's put it like a Donald Trump.
Every so you get those people that kind of are able to walk that I don't know, walk that line, but it is what it is. They've kind of been there and done it. And, it's baked in the cake.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, but there's guys, like, I mean, I think the perfect example is like a Donald Trump, where he's at the point where it's like, it's expected he's going to say something ridiculous, so there's not like any shock in it anymore. Like, he's uncancelable, there's nothing that he can say that people didn't already think he was about to say anyway. And you have to get through to that point.
Yeah, and I think, if we're going to talk about wrestling, I think Vince is at that point. I think, Vince has got enough shit that has gone on in his life that, and it's, listen, if, especially in the wrestling business, now people will cancel people based on a fucking hat they wore. It's Trump, or, that person is an anti-vaxxer. Well, Jesus Christ, man, you can't get any more Trumpian than Linda McMahon working for fucking Trump. And yet, you know what? Everybody hates WWE, but yet everybody still watches WWE. So everybody online that hates WWE still watches WWE to bitch about WWE. So, it's what. I mean, with Vince, and same thing with Linda. So people go, okay. All right.
What it all comes down to is, and I'm definitely guilty, it's like people just love the bitch, and now we have with every social media outlet, it's like, I have a voice, and I'm just a fucking wrestler, and now, apparently I'm also an interviewer and podcaster, so I feel like my opinion matters, and then if you just say it enough and you get enough likes, then, whatever it is your opinion is, it becomes fact, and that's like, it's like a thing. I think like David Starr, for example, who is somebody, he's done. He's out of the wrestling world, with whatever. And it was one, probably because he just talked too much. But the other one is just that, but before that, he was just a person that was in his head such a big influencer because of how many retweets he gets. So his opinion is just become fact. And if you disagreed with him, it's like he would show you how many retweets he got compared to how many you got with yours,
Who the fuck is David Starr?
It doesn't matter, man. He doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
It's a wrestler, indie wrestler. He's good, very talented. He's just very opinionated guy. And he got himself canceled because, an issue, as with many of them, it's like a sexual abuse type of case. And honestly,
Oh,
was,
okay. Yeah, I don't,
Oh yeah, and it's
all right.
not worth getting into on them, but I mean, it's pretty much, it's like all I had to do is say that, and then you kind of get it. You could fill in the void.
Yeah. Well, was he like Joey Ryan doing, that type of thing?
No, more of like a mental abuse type of thing. So like, I guess he, like a gaslighter type of person, making somebody feel shitty and things like that. It really, honestly, it's it's not as much that I follow. You kind of hear it a little, and then I just go, David, I think that the only thing that if you really wanted to be smart about this is instead of like writing these novels, in your defense, you just shut the fuck up, and that's it. And then maybe it would have kind of went away, but all you did was just, tout your own guilt online, and I'm not saying that, that I think that he shouldn't have been canceled or anything like that, or I'm trying to give him the guidance on how to not get canceled. I'm just saying, dude, I mean, you kind of did it to yourself. So it's like all those retweets and all those things about your opinion.
You gotta remember, kid, when I came back, I kind of had to get re-educated on the wrestling business. So I didn't know any of the indie kids. I didn't know anything about deathmatch wrestling in the sense of I didn't know what the deathmatch wrestling was. In my era, deathmatch wrestling was the garbage of garbage wrestling.
Yeah.
You were a piece of shit if you did deathmatch wrestling. You were someone that didn't know how to work. You didn't know how to get over without mutilating your own body.
Right.
It was the last bastion of wrestling. And anybody that watched it, you didn't give a fuck. Like, you inbred hillbilly jerk off. So obviously the business changed, and I've done shows, and I've done shows like a few podcasts where we've pontificated about this, and I've said, well, where the fuck did this change? And I had somebody say to me, well, Vice started doing these specials on and it kind of created this aura of hip and cool and emo, and it created this sense of a place for these kids, these Gen Zers or whatever the hell you want to call them, to conjugate and basically say, this is ours. This is ours now. And then it became very woke, very politically correct, very deathmatch wrestling is art. We're theater performers. And I just was like, oh, okay.
That was the best. Oh.
And I'm like,
that could have been it. Like,
all right. So it went from, this, and it wasn't like we're talking about the 70s to now. About a 16-year period, deathmatch wrestling went to nobody looking at it as anything other than a bunch of out of shape, fucking no talented wrestlers mutilating themselves to a very, very beautiful art form. And, and then and it just then kind of went to, all right, we're going to stop the show because a couple of you in the audience are saying it's about the performers. So we're all going to stop performing. And it was like, what the fuck is going on? What? So it took me a while
Yeah.
to kind of get acclimated with what wrestling is now, or at least parts of wrestling. Not all of it, but, a part of it, which, GCW and various other people that are kind of the prominent ones, even the intergender stuff, where you're basically just taking a girl and beating the fuck out of her. You're beating the fuck out of a girl. And you're the Casey Cattell girl. I mean, you're literally taking this girl, beating the fuck out of her, and then letting her have a couple comebacks, and then giving her a comeback at the end and putting her over, and everybody goes crazy. But you literally just beat the fuck out of them. You put, gusset plates in her fucking head, and but yet these very same people that love that kind of look at stuff that we did back in the 90s. I can't believe you guys put a girl through a table.
Right.
You took a girl wearing a bikini and you put her through a table. That's so misogynistic. It's like, wait a minute. You're cheering taking a little girl and beating the fuck out of her. Yes, but that's different, bro. There's some guys in the audience that are getting off on watching this girl get this shit beat out of her. Well, it's different. Okay, all right. You win, and it's a weird sense of wrestling that we are in, and you just.
Do you know what I think? What I think it is if people look at it back then on your product back then, and they compare it to now, it's like really all it is just people listen to the masses. So at the time, it was completely unheard of to see something like that. Like to have what Casey Cattell goes through, which, by the way, like that girl has the hardest fucking head ever. And it blows my goddamn mind. But I've seen her land on it like 8 million times and get up and just like have a beer. But regardless, like I'm not to put her over. It's just that what it is, everybody listens to the masses, and at that time, everybody collectively believed in this. And then somehow, some way, it could have been one individual that just said something that sparked this flame that just opened up a door, and then all of a sudden it leads to now 2022. And then intergender wrestling is now, it's just a completely normal thing. And you don't even really fucking hear intergender wrestling anymore. You just hear this is the match. And then that's what it is, and that's what it's come. And you don't know what that in between was, in which it became like full judgment on you and then no judgment at all ever again, Planet Fitness, and it's just like, so it's that in between that's the unknown. That's how I kind of see it. It's like I know that out of nowhere something just clicked, and then everybody, and it's not just with intergender wrestling or women's wrestling, the boom of it. It's just that with every little thing, it's like how wrestlers train. Like I came at that tail end of where like it's not believable for me to have an offense. It's not believable for me to do anything and things like that. And then I'm just getting my ass beat all the time and all that shit. And, you get a match for after, almost over a year, you get your first match. And even then, it's not like anything you're going to be proud of. And then now it's like there are guys that are training for 6 months and then they're, they could become like a superstar overnight. And that happens more regularly. And I'm not mad at it. I'm just saying that something clicked with these little things and where it became acceptable within the wrestling business as well as outside of the wrestling business, all the fans who are like, technically they all feel like they're in the wrestling business anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we literally could pontificate all night on this. And again, wrestling is different, but how many times I hear people say, well, in a boom period now. And I go, we're not, though. You think it's a boom period because you're young and everybody's doing fucking wrestling. But we're not in a boom period. A boom period was in the fucking 90s. That was the real boom. That's when wrestling was so fresh. And I compare it to remember, how old are you?
I'm 32.
How old are you? Okay, you're like my wife's age. And so I try to explain to her how, and me and Kleinrock, who owns Mass Republic, was my GM back in the day. And we have this conversation all the time. When Metallica and the era of metal first became comfortable, so the radio played them. The Grammys nominated them for an award. That was, it was a first, and it was huge. And it made Metallica and, at the time, Megadeth, and it was a boom period of that music. It became something very commercial. It became
not underground anymore.
You weren't underground anymore. You arrived. You were being played Jay Leno or Jay Carson. All of a sudden, a night show that normally would only have David Bowie now featured fucking Metallica. And all of us, we all fucking high-fived each other. We were like, oh my God, look, we're not fucking losers anymore. Our music, our way of life has made it. And that same thing can be applied to wrestling. So, you know, the 40s, 50s, whatever. And then you had Hulk Hogan. And you had Hulk Hogan and Mr. T in WrestleMania. And you had Hulk Hogan and fucking goddamn Rocky. And then you had Hogan in MTV and the fucking, rock and wrestling. And all of a sudden, wrestling became mainstream. All of a sudden, Hulk Hogan's on Johnny Carson. And now all of us wrestling fans are fucking calling each other up going, hey, man, did you see that? Did you see Hogan? We've arrived. The fake wrestling is no longer a joke. We've arrived. And same thing with being guest starring in movies. Oh my God, did you see Hulk Hogan or whoever as it started to evolve? So all of a sudden, when, WCW guys show up on base, all of these things, it was like, oh my God, the buzz, we've got to be part of this. We all got to see. And then as that gets saturated and more wrestlers become accepted by Hollywood to the point where now, well, if a wrestler's in a Hollywood movie, you don't bat an eye. Yeah. You don't sit there and go, oh my God, did you? The Rock, that's it. The biggest fucking star in Hollywood action film. So if somebody goes and does what? What? Oh, John Cena. It's like a normal thing. Wrestling is now what heavy metal music was. It's been there. It's done it. There's nothing left. It's the commercial vibe. All of that is gone. And now, like you said, wrestling, it is. You don't need to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that could get you into a wrestling school. There's a fucking wrestling school on every corner of every shitbag town and every shitbag city and every shitbag state in the fucking America. And as long as you got $1,000, you could run a fucking wrestling show. And guess what? you're a professional wrestler. You can't put on a goddamn fucking football helmet and shoulder pad as a football player, but you could do it as a professional wrestler. You could fucking go to a wrestling school, be trained by someone that's never drawn any goddamn money, that's never done anything in the business. He now anoints you as a professional wrestler. You go get your first wrestling gig for $10, and now when you go out to a bar or you go meet a girl, and she goes, "What do you do?" "I'm a pro wrestler." "Oh, you're a Yeah, I'm a pro wrestler." "No, you're not, you fuckhead. You pretend. You play you're a pro wrestler. You're not a fucking pro wrestler. No different than me putting on a baseball uniform and saying I'm a Major League Baseball player." But pro wrestling is the only entertainment business that you could get away with it. Because even acting, you go, "I'm an actor. What have you been in?" Well, I've been in it." Well, nah, you're not a fucking actor, bro.
Yeah. No. It was in an Acme commercial. And if I told somebody I'm an actor.
But pro wrestling. So now wrestling, you think it's a boom period, but it's not. You think it's a boom period because there's wrestling everywhere. It's wrestling, but it's not. Less people are watching wrestling than ever before. There's basically more wrestlers and more wrestling companies fighting for a piece of the pie. The pie's not growing. We're the same tiny bit of the pie. We're not expanding it. We're not growing this pie. Maybe we are, XPW. Maybe GCW is. Maybe small companies are, but there's a fucking ceiling. There's a ceiling to where that's going to grow. Wrestling is not something that's evolving on a constant basis. It's just not. Perfect example. Look at AEW. AEW's basically been exactly ago. They're basically exactly where they were 3 years ago. I mean, year after year, they should be growing an audience by 2, 3, 4, 500,000, 600,000. But they're not. They have their base, and they have a strong base, and they make money with that base. But it's not like that base is growing leaps and bounds. Either is WWE. WWE is where they are. They get their audience, they get their base, and that's it.
Yeah, you're right. I don't disagree. I think that what it is,
they already got their $1 billion deals. Is what?
I said I don't think you're wrong. I think what it is that more people now are in the last decade are more aware because of social media that there is other wrestling other than WWE, right? That's all it really was. And then the thing is, what happens as there's more people becoming aware of independent wrestling, there's no more the tape trading type of shit. It's just you're one click away from seeing something that happened literally 2 minutes ago. And I mean, like you're looking at somebody's story on Instagram, you're clicking on a hashtag on Twitter, and then you're seeing a match that just happened. Like not even the match is not even fucking over yet, and you're able to see it. But at the same time, what's the problem is the attention span of people. Like there's no more where if you got a tape, you're watching the entire fucking show. These people live on GIFs. They live on these clips or whatever. And if you have an entire match, basically all you really need is to have one big spot that is GIF worthy, and then you can have 1 million fucking views, and then all of a sudden you become a star, and that's all it really is. However, at the same time, wrestling it's not necessarily growing. It's just that it's almost like a funny clip on TikTok, or on YouTube that somebody just did a quick little 30-second funny thing, and then it went viral, and then that's it. And then guess what? Nobody even knows who the fuck that person is. They just remember that spot, and then that's it.
Well, and kid, don't forget the business. We as a business, and I mean, I'm not, you know what, I shouldn't say we, because I was out for a while. You guys did more harm to the business by basically business as a very open book. And whenever you talk about kayfabe and the young guys like you guys, and I'm not saying you personally, but the younger generation make fun of us old guys going, kayfabe, everybody knows it's fake, and they make fun of us. But yet, why does David Copperfield and why do magicians, why does Hollywood, why does anybody that still create or a fantasy, why do they do everything in their power to keep the fantasy going as long as possible? Why does David Copperfield and other magicians not show you how a fucking trick is done? Why do people in Hollywood do everything they can to not go, oh, yeah, you could see the camera and the boom mic? Who gives a shit? You know it's a movie. What? Because you break wall of knowing that it's a movie versus, oh, my God, I got lost into this production. And we're the only business that goes, me and you hate each other, and then we're going to get done, and we're going to congratulate each other on what a great match we had on the internet, and then we're going to go do karaoke and drink shots at a fucking bar with fans. That's fucking retarded. But you know what? Today's generation goes, why'd you guys do that? Shut up, old boomer. Okay, all right. And that's also what has destroyed aspects of the business, because everybody is let in. It's just a big fuck party now. It's just a big theatrical show that we're all in on. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And it's back to your thing of, it's about spots. It's not about storytelling. It's not about emotion. It's not about somebody going, is this real? Are they shooting? Did he go off script? That's not part of our business anymore. Now it's basically like, oh, that Joey Janelli couldn't put his fucking fire out on his boot. Ha 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 ha. Yay. Woo. That's it. There you go. And that's what everybody's been talking about for the last 4 days. That's what they're talking about in pro wrestling. That fucking he couldn't put his fire out on his foot.
I think
that's crazy.
I know, but what I think it is, at least I notice it. It's I remember when I first was trying to be a bad guy, and it, like, you know, I never was allowed ever because I'm too small and it's not believable yet. That's never say die attitude bullshit. And then I started, you know, I realized, like, well, I'm actually a lot better at promos and all this, and it became this bad character, you know, and it made fans hate me. I mean, I think if I get one fan that I had to, like, almost that try to want to stab me in real life, and then I'm like, I think I got him, right? And it's so much harder to make somebody believe I'm this bad guy. And not just me, but as an example, it's like, man, how can I be this bad guy? And then after my match or during intermission, before it or whatever, that I'm going to go out there and sell T-shirts and be super nice to them and take pictures. Yeah. And then at the end of it, I'm giving him the finger while he's wearing the shirt he just gave me money for. And I'm just going, fuck. It's like, you got to pick your battles, you know, and it's like, and obviously I get, you know, you can't have that, like, separate locker room, you know, shit for the heels and the face. Like, I get, like, you can get past that, but it's the other one is when you're hanging out with, like, the fans, you know, and you're selling T-shirts and you're not the same character. I think the only guy that I see do that is MJF. Like, he's that guy, and he found his thing to be able to still be, you know, the bad guy, but and yet still take pictures with fans and make it more acceptable and funny. That's like, hey, did you know I had to pay this guy $20 to get a picture with him? Otherwise he wouldn't take it. So then I gave it to him, and I'm just going, fuck. Like, why didn't I think of that? You know, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll take a picture. You know, just like make sure you tag me in it. You know, that type of idea and that mentality, and that's what it is now. I'm not saying that's not what I do. I'm just saying that, like, at the end of the day, that's what I think is one of those small parts that made it socially acceptable to just go out with the crowd, and then, you know, and then that turns into like, hey, you know, I hate you when you're out there or whatever, but like, man, you're a really good guy when you're hanging out with us at the bar. And I'm just in my head, like, I know that they mean that as like a compliment because it's just me as a person. But then I just go, well, fuck. And I'm fucking my own self in the long run. And then it changes who I am as a, you know, and then immediately that's where like the term, I think, tweener comes in, you know, where it's like, where I don't know, you have to somehow justify how you are as a bad guy. Like, oh, I'm a bad guy because I'm in the zone and you're in my way, you know, but then when I go, you know, back to the curtain, I'm just like, hey man, thank you for the match, dude, you know, and then I go back out there, hey, thanks for booing me, dude, you know, I really appreciate it. Like, who the fuck like does that? But it's like that kind of a compliment of, I mean, I like you as a person, but man, when you're in that ring, I hate you, you know, and I just go, fuck me, you know. I almost just like, I don't want to sell the t-shirt. Like,
yeah, I know. I know. So it's, like I said, bro, we literally could do, I could talk this type of kind of, wrestling shit for hours. Cause I've had these types of conversation with, you know, some of the boys a lot. And I've had it with timers that have basically given up, where they go, well, if you still want to, you know, work in the business, this is kind of what you got to do now. And it's just kind of like, wow, this is sad. You know, it's like, it's just sad. And I'm not talking about, you know, being an old timer and you're not on top and you're doing indies. I'm just talking about knowing that the business is what it is now, and you have to go against everything that you
fell in love with it for. Right?
You kind of get along. So you got, and it's just like, you know, okay, all right. And then there are some of them that are like, fuck it, I don't care. This, I'm not, you know, I don't care. I'm living the gimmick 24/7. Fuck them.
Oh yeah, and that's what I like. It's, you know, I mean, I have fun, you know, being who I am, and I think that if I were to look at myself, you know, Kid Osborne, who I am, and then, you know, who I am outside of the ring, it's like, you know, even as a bad guy, you know, I'm not the Undertaker, I'm not a gimmick, I'm just me. And, you know, if somebody buys something or somebody gives me something like a beer or whatever, and I'm gonna say thanks, I'm not going to say, yeah, you know, and then take it like it, but I think that there are guys though that like are that you kind of have to pick your battles, and you go around what, you know, what the norm is now. And you find, you know, a way to stay yourself, but you kind of mimic what's accepted. Like, yeah, you could live the character 100%. You know, but if you are the character, then it's not really like you're, you know, it's not like you're trying, I guess. Like, I'd say, for example, like Schlack, you know, Schlack is I think now, surprisingly, has become my perfect example. Like, he is who he is. And then in the ring, he's no different than, you know, if you meet, like, he's definitely not, but I'm just going to say Michael Jordan. You know, if you see Michael Jordan and, you know, outside, and then you know, you talk to him, he's going to be all nice. He's going to shake your hand like a cloud, you know, and then obviously when he's there on court, you know, that's a completely different fucking guy. You know, that's a guy that wants to win, you know, and that's kind of like Schlack, but he doesn't take away from who he is, you know, like I'm not apologizing to any fans for what I said to them. I'm going to be like, yeah, I meant it. I did, you know, thanks for not jumping the guardrail that's not there anymore because apparently no promotions that I wrestle for have them. So I mean, like,
No.
but
Yeah, well, you haven't wrestled for me yet, but I'm still the guy that believes in fucking guardrails. I'm still the guy that.
I love them, and I'm like, why don't I see these often? I feel like that's just as important as a ring.
Because the new norm for wrestling or indie wrestling is no guardrails, like artsy lighting, and the fans are allowed and basically rest their elbows on the ring apron. And it creates, as I was told, a very intimate club atmosphere. I'm like, well, I
don't hate it. Like, I don't hate that if that's like a niche. It's the same thing as like a no ring. Like, I mean, when the first time I did a no ring, I was is Casanova Valentine and in New York, and man, like, I don't mind these matches. I love them, and especially me as like a smaller guy, and I love that, the hit it. I love getting hit. It wakes me the fuck up. There's not as much thinking involved with the no ring, as much as there is in a ring, I guess. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to do this every day because I don't like having to lay all this shit in because that fan is that fucking close, to my head, and I just go, you can't, like, I'm not ever going to be that guy ever that they see this fucking gap of a kick and I fake it, like, ever. And I fucking hate that. But when, so I get that niche on some, like, Beyond, and I think that's cool. I do. However, now it's like because of something like that worked, then all of a sudden everybody goes, ooh, we just lost an expense, so we don't have to do that anymore. And then I just go, fuck, because I like being able to yell at somebody from afar. I also like the idea that because I'm far enough away and I'm inside of a ring, I look a little bit taller than I really am, So there's that little bit of disbelief, and then they can't fucking touch me. And I like that because I don't really like, every single time, somebody going in like, oh my God, I like your hair, or like touching my shoulder every fucking time I'm near them. It's like, get the fuck away from me. And that's why I have a table, in between, and I'm afraid to come out. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I guess I'm just that, people just like going, hey, what's going on, kid? I just booed you, and I fucking, but I love you, man. And it's away from me. But,
yeah, I mean, that was one of those things that I had to, where's the guardrails? Oh, they don't use them anymore. What do you mean they don't fucking use them? We don't use the guardrails anymore. Why? Well, because that's, like I said, the club atmosphere. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. I'm, again, to me, I've always believed, and I'll
the separation.
Well, that there's certain things. There is certain entertainment things, movies, sports, whatever, that don't need to be fucked with. And when you try to fuck with them, whether it's the Impact 6-sided ring, or it's like, you know what was wrong with the fuck had for, well, because this is different. Okay, but it doesn't have to be different. It's just like every different football league that goes, we're going to compete, and we're going to be the new NFL. We're going to play during the spring instead of the winter. We're going to have no touchbacks. And every single one of these fucking things wind up blowing a big fart because people go, this is what we've watched for 80 years. This is what we want. It's not broke, so don't fucking.
Yeah, don't fix it.
Don't try to fix something that's not broke. And I think there's aspects of pro wrestling that everybody tries to do something and be different, where a lot of times it doesn't need to be. it just doesn't need to be. You could still get over with not doing 8,000 moonsaults and flips and, and when you see somebody get over, there's still something to be said about somebody getting over skills. Well, that's not reinventing the fucking wheel. That's the oldest thing in pro wrestling, but not a lot of people are able to do it anymore. Everybody will get on the mic. Let me get 5 minutes on the mic. Let me get 2 minutes on the mic. And they're the shits. But every so somebody hammers out a promo and everybody goes, holy shit. Dude, that was fucking awesome. Well, yeah, because that's wrestling. That's the oldest aspect of wrestling. And if you could get over, and you don't need to do, a moonsault from a mall balcony onto guys. I mean, cut a promo, and you're like, wow, that was pretty good. That guy's over.
But those are the things, Rob, that you can't sugarcoat. You can edit things together and you put music behind something. That's fine. But if you can for example, if I cut a promo about a show, right, and you've never seen any of my promos before. You don't know. I don't think you have. But I have to do something that I think sticks out. But if I have to, and I'm limited, and I'm cutting a promo, and I need to be, and I want to get it over, and this is my background. This is it. I got nothing. No otherwhere. I can't go anywhere else or whatever. I know that I can cut something appealing and that comes off genuine and intimate, whatever, and have somebody believe, at the end of the day, that this match is the most important thing in my life, whatever. But the idea is there are people that's one of those things that you can't change. You can't just stick out. When we're talking about a ring in wrestling, whether it's 6-sided, or you have no guardrails, or you have this intimate lighting, if it's a bad match, it's going to be a bad match, and if this motherfucker can't cut a promo and the way that, he looks at the camera and then looks away, it's like you can tell at that very moment that the person is scared, doesn't know how to cut a promo, and he looks like a fucking ant that's shaking its legs because the wind blew too quickly, and he's never going to, he's not going to fuck any other ants. That's what it is at the end of the day. So there's things that you just can't fix, and there are things that you can make people believe something, if they're just kind of glancing quickly. But to anybody that actually watches wrestling, you can tell when somebody sucks. You can tell when somebody can't wrestle, somebody can't cut a promo. And I think that at the end of the day, that's, as long, if it's basically, if you can fake it, you fake it till you make it type of thing. But eventually it's going to catch up. And that's why, you don't last, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, we could do it. We could do this all fucking night.
Oh, I know, and we have. I barely got touched any of this, which I definitely wanted to do. So I'm gonna. I mean, I don't want to go too long. I mean, I don't want to keep you up so late, sir. But we talked about wrestling now compared to then, and we did talk. We talked about women's wrestling then and now, but really,
but wait a minute.
Everybody.
I think a woman doing a death match and getting the shit beat out of her is different than traditional women's wrestling.
Which is why I wanted to bring up that the card that you had, or the tournament. I don't know all the matches on the card, but Schlack had showed me when we were on the way to Rochester. I was like, this is one of the best fucking tournaments, women's tournaments, cards that I think I've ever seen. We talked about this, for a good while in the car, going and this was Rob,
Yeah. I had a, like I said, Kleinrock, he actually did a funny little, Facebook post, but, he hit me privately at one point. He was like, dude, if you would have told anybody, X amount of years ago that you would have a women's tournament involving the AAA champion, and at the time Deanna was Ring of Honor champion, the Ring of Honor champion, the NWA Women's champion, all competing for the XPW Women's Championship. He goes, no. And he goes, and you got all of these women together in a tournament. And he's like, that's just mind-blowing. And he goes, and you're still the big bad Rob Black. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. The whole conversation was like, it's like, we're like, we're going like, how much did he offer? and then we're going, that, and we're like, it's obviously, I mean, there's there's several things, but regardless, it's the fact that you're putting that card together and it looked phenomenal. Like, it was enough, but that was it. We were like, Jesus Christ. Like, I don't think anybody thought he was going to say that. It's like, I don't know if you watch The Simpsons, like Homer, fucking playing with his mashed potatoes and building this circus tent, and the whole family's just looking at him. And then, he's like, that's it. I'm going to clown college. And then he storms out, and then there's just Bart going, well, I don't think any of us thought he was going to say that, like, and that was, and that's you putting together a fucking, women's tournament card.
Well, listen, you got to remember a very important aspect. The one thing about me, and again, I think my reputation supersedes, and I get a bum rap for shit that's not, real, but I never rapist. I'm not a pedophile. I'm not creepy to women. Like, all of those things that are like really fucking bad were never hung around my neck. I was just, Rob Black kind of quote unquote gangstery. That you could get around. But, going into texting women and going, hey, shit, it's hard. And that's the one thing throughout my wrestling, life, no woman could ever say, oh yeah, Rob was very creepy with me. I was very like, whatever. Even dealing with Taya and dealing with Camille, it's just a very, I remember Taya hugging me after the thing. I remember just like, okay, and you're all sweaty and
I've never heard anything like that. And like,
all right,
but
I don't know. I'm just that's never been my, listen. The biggest rap I had was an ex-worker 20 years ago saying that I forced him to do death matches and take unprotected chair shots. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that was the big, Rob forced me to do death matches.
Yeah. It's the same, dude. It's like not.
Okay,
it's the same as, like,
all right.
Vince. It's the same as Vince. Somebody being told like I had to do this for Vince, otherwise I couldn't have a contract. It's like Vince. It's like, well, you don't have to do anything. Like, that's just the way it is. But I doubt that highly. Regardless, is what I think, and it's just to go back. It's the same thing with when we were talking about with a woman in a bikini taking a chair shot or whatever. It's just it's that, wow, back then they said the X, Y, and Z about you, and then it's just like one of those things that it's like you heard it at a bar, and then you took it as fact until and you believed it for this 20-year period until you finally brought it up to somebody and they go, he didn't do that. It's like, dude, that guy didn't say that. He didn't do that, and then you're just going, oh, I believed that for 20 years, and I told everybody I know, all my friends and family think that, and like, that's just not the fucking case,
Well, Kit, how long? I always, what I always bring up, and it's so vulgar, but I always bring up, growing up, all of us believed that Richard Gere had to go to a hospital because he had a gerbil stuck up his ass. That was always the
what?
that was always the rumor back in the day was gay, and that was a big thing in the gay world, which they get a fucking tube and let a gerbil run up the guy's asshole, and then he has the gerbil running around his fucking colon.
It's
and
like
so
that.
He had to go,
they made fun of that in South Park.
Exactly. So that was like, it was one of those things. So there's been so much stuff about me that eventually, I kind of marvel our age who will be like, oh, dude, yeah, I heard Rob does. And it's like, dude, you were like fucking 6 years old when XPW was around. Where did you hear that? Oh, I heard that from, I heard, I was at a show and, it's like, the fuck out of here.
That's how it all happens, dude. I swear to God. Like, that's why I use that reference. I'm like, I get all my information from some old guy at a bar, and I just take his word as fact. And then I just tell everybody that until somebody, like educates me on the thing. Oh God, that's great. I was gonna say, all right. So what I did, I wanted to bring up like the Dark Side of the Ring show. I know that you didn't have anything to do with it. You didn't want, it was almost like the beginning of this conversation where you don't do this normally. And you didn't want anything, you didn't want to be sat down, and almost like interrogated, hey, somebody, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that about, unprotected chair shots. And then you're like, fuck that. And that was probably a really smart move, that you did that because they could paint any picture they want. And I'm not saying that they would do that, but because
look what they did to Tommy. Well, look what they did to Tommy Dreamer. Look at that.
Yeah, he said that one thing, and to defend. Yep.
Because of this season, even before they said they weren't going to be doing another season, I said that it's over because they would never get any more credible people to participate in those shows after what happened with Dreamer. So once that happened, and Flair, remember, the whole Flair thing was something that got litigated 20 fucking years ago. And the people's recollection of what happened on Dark Side of the Ring is not what happened. So people were saying things that happened that didn't happen. And it was proven. Linda was on I can't remember the exact thing, but Rob Van Dam saying somebody was on the plane that wasn't on the plane, that it was proven weren't on the plane. So after all of that, I said, they're not going to do another one because who's going to do this? Because all the boys, all the veteran boys are going to go, dude, don't do that show. Hey, Jericho, don't fucking do that show. Hey, Dreamer, hey, so-and-so. And that was that.
Right. But that's
a lot of people, and I've said this on my show. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and that was one of the, I of course I read, I looked it up before, I'm like, why? Because I watched it. I watched that thing before I met you. And of course I know who you are. I watched XPW and all that, but I wanted to know why you weren't on it because like I didn't know your whole life, I'm not over here just going, like sitting in the car going to XPW going, I can't fucking wait to meet Rob Black, like I was listening to your podcast going, oh man, this guy's going to be fucking great, and like, but I know what you've created. I know that, you have outside of wrestling, with Extreme Associates, and all that. I know you have a sex store and all that. And I'm like, in my head, the first thing I said was, why are we doing it at his burger joint and not doing it at the sex store? And then Schlack just turns around and just goes, well, he doesn't want to ruin any of the stuff. And I was like, and he said it so like, well, why would you even think that? Of course he doesn't want to ruin all of his stuff. I didn't even think of that.
And I talked about this on my show. A lot of people with the whole Dark Side of the Ring thing, they think, they think they called me up or they came over and I ran away. I talked to them. We negotiated. It wasn't that I wasn't going to do it. I was close to doing it, but they wouldn't agree to my fucking terms.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we just couldn't agree. And it had nothing to do with money. It all stemmed out of creative control.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I wanted ample time to tell my story if it was going to be about my story. And I couldn't get that it would be my story. And I couldn't get a guarantee that it wouldn't be me for 5 minutes and then my shit cut and I look like a fucking jack-off.
Right. The clock in the background constantly changing and editing it to where you're saying something wrong. And I totally get that. It's like, why would I want to testify and be a defendant, in court when I could just say, nah, not interested, and then just continue my free life being completely fine, whereas like you're automatically wrong because of whatever story anybody wants to paint.
Well, I talked to them 3 different times. So I talked to the producer 3 different times. One time for probably 2 hours. And then about 3 weeks later for an hour. And then the final time, the kid even played a little hardball with me. And in the sense of he goes, well, we're still gonna do it, this and that. And I said, well, you know what? At the end of it, at least say, hey, come on down to Rob's cheeseburger place and come on down to his gift shop. And he goes, no, what we're gonna do is say we reached out for you to you and you gave us no comment. And I go, well, that's not true because I didn't.
That
say
was your
no
comment. You wanted a comment.
I go,
I did.
I go, I'm just not talking. And he laughs. He goes, I know. I'm just joking. And I'm like, bro, do whatever the fuck you got to do. I go for it. And I remember he's a local indie kid, and he's been around forever. He was actually in WWE for like 7 months. Colin Delaney. And I always joke with Colin. I go, that's your fucking claim to fame, being in fuck. He goes, yeah, dude. I'm me and Tommy Dreamer, man. Right? And he goes, I even got a fucking doll, man. I got.
I think he was in a video game. It's like that
Colin
guy's living the dream.
At Extreme. So I remember sitting there, and he comes in at the tail end in one of the conversations, and he's like, who are you talking to? And I was like, fucking Dark Side of the Ring. And he goes, tell me you're not going to fucking do that. And he's like, you have absolutely nothing to gain. And he was like real animate. And he's like, you have nothing to gain.
He's a fucking really smart
about
dude.
Doing that show. And I'm like, relax, bro. I go, this ain't my first.
Like, relax,
I understand it. I go, but I want to hear what they got to say. I want to. I go, in my youth, I would have been doing it in a second because that's how I basically put my dick on the line. Was back in the day, I did every fucking interview. I did every crazy fucking thing. I ran for mayor. I did
Yes,
everything.
yes, I totally, I read that, and I was like, you got, like, I think 700 something votes or whatever. I mean, like, it's just at the end of the day, I saw that just right fucking before this. I was like, I don't know if I want to bring that up, but I'm like, God damn it, that fucking rules. Like,
in order
for mayor.
And in order to get on the ballot, I had to get signatures from registered voters.
I know. I used to do that for a living.
And so I sat there in the office, and me and Kleinrock, and I hatched this idea. I go, I'm going to run for fucking mayor. And he's
it's like Jerry Lawler,
Great idea. Great. And so we're going through it, and it's like, you need these, 10,000 signatures. And I'm like, all right. I go, get all the boys, get everybody together, and they got to go out and get fucking signatures. So I don't remember how many of the boys went out, but I don't know, maybe 10 of them were out there. There's White Trash Johnny Webb. They're all getting fucking signatures. And, the boys went out and got the signatures. And I got on the ballot. I did fucking debates with, like, the legitimate who wound up becoming the mayor. I did debates at schools as Rob Black. And so back in the day, I did
as Rob Black.
every goddamn thing to get publicity for Extreme and XPW. That was the name of the game. So, when I did the Frontline piece, my PR guy at the time goes, Zupko, and he goes, PBS Frontline is doing a big thing on porn. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, they're going to do one segment on Vivid. And I go, I'm in. And he goes, oh, I'm not done telling you. And I go, I don't care. Vivid, I'm in. If it's Vivid, I'm in. I go, I got to be in. It's fucking, fuck that. I'm the biggest. Fuck him. I'm bigger than Steve Hirsch. I got to fight. So he goes, it's Vivid, Hustler, and then Extreme Associates. I go, I'm in. Leaving, and I remember Kleinrock and my inner sanctum, and they all looked at me and they went, I don't know if this is a good idea. And I was like, why? And they're like, because PBS Frontline is a very right-wing propaganda instrument. And I'm like, yeah. And they go, it's not going to be a good piece. I go, I don't give a fuck. Fuck them. Fuck them. And there you go. The piece was about the extremes of when Vivid being the nice porn, Hustler being the porn that was what got it busted, back in the 70s and fought, and this new guy who owns a wrestling company that's got gig marks all over his fucking head, him and his new porn, and how his is the worst and he should go to fucking jail. Yeah. And that was basically how the piece was. So when they interviewed me, and if you watch the interview, I marks on my fucking head, and they're like, do you want to be the test case for the new administration for George Bush and John Ashcroft and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be the test case, but if they want me to do it, I'll welcome that. And I just basically was like, fuck you, fuck George Bush, fuck all you right-wing cocksuckers. What are you? I'm indestructible. And that was basically how I came off. And I got indicted 7 months later. Yeah. And everybody goes, you got indicted because of that fucking that piece. And I was like,
would you do it again? Would you do it over? Or?
Fuck yeah.
That's awesome. And the reason is
because who I am today, warts and all, wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah, just because you're afraid of
and all that type of kind of butterfly effect shit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be with the girl that I'm with now. I wouldn't have these 2 kids. Granted, I could be with another girl and I would have other kids and, whatever. And I wouldn't know this life. But I do know this life. This is the life that I'm living. And I wouldn't have this life if I didn't go through the things that I went through, which was the obscenity, indictment, fighting the government, eventually going to prison, losing everything, getting divorced, just that wild ride, and then all circling back to 2022 with XPW again, which is basically what I started with back in 97.
Comes full circle, man, and I think that it is exactly what you said. It's a fucking wild ride. I mean, it's a story that I'm just like, when I read that you ran for office, for mayor, all I thought was, if it were me, like, this is exact, and I didn't read anything. Everything you just told me is, like, I'm just so fucking happy. It was like a good sauce. I'm like, oh my God, it's everything that I expected it to be. Is because it was when I read it, I was reading it, and it was just this one little line saying that Rob Black had ran for mayor in California, and I just fucking go, oh, he used that exposure so fucking hard, and he did everything that he wanted to do with it, that anybody would want to do with it, but how many would cower away from doing it when it was faced with them. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're running for office and you go, oh wow, I see the seriousness of this. And then they just all of a sudden they change and they become, political, right? They're not themselves anymore. They don't care about what they care about. And then you running for office, you have a fucking porn company. And I'm just going, how does this play out? Like in my head, I'm like, how would this play out if I was in his shoes? Because there was no other information. I didn't look it up. And I just go, I want to learn from you to hear how you did it. But I almost didn't want to bring it up. I have it on my list that I was going to surprise you with. and you brought it up, and I'm like, it's a fucking badass move. It's like you used every little outlet that was there at the time, and you made it work to your advantage to every business that you own. And then at the end of the day, it's like, it kind of fucked you, for a little bit. However, it's like, man, to circle back to go to 2022, it's like, and then you just started XPW. And then the second I saw that, and then I saw Schlack was like in there immediately, I hit him up and I was like, hey man, I really want to be a fucking part of this. Like, and I was like, can you please just kind of, maybe reach out to him or whatever. And I was just like, because I always thought it was awesome.
It's funny
and different.
When I relaunched XPW, I've always had the podcast. I've been doing it for like 10 years, but I've had different incarnations of it. At one point we talked just about porn, and then there's time we just talked about current events, and then there's a time where we just talked about politics, but from the left, where I was very kind of left wingish, and then talked about it and brought it back to the right side, and then went from that point back to wrestling. And so all of these incarnations of the personality, constantly reinventing, constantly, you got to constantly reinvent. That's why The Undertaker's the fucking biker taker, and The Undertaker, and there's actually people that debate
which one's better. Like, it took so much time.
I love the biker. That was awesome. So it's a constant, reinventing myself into something that is still me, but it's just a little bit different.
Right.
So when I brought XPW back, and I started kind of exploring wrestling again, and I started talking about wrestling, I started to talk to the audience about these wrestlers that I had seen. Weird site called Murder, Death, Kill on this Instagram. I'm like, you guys, it's the craziest shit I've ever seen. And I go, and then I see this guy named Shylock. And this guy, Shylock, he eats glass. And then all of a sudden on my instant messenger, it goes, it's pronounced Schlack.
Oh, it's fucking
and I
beautiful.
love your fucking show. And oh wow. I go, the real Schlack. I go, am I saying this right? I go, the real Schlack is telling, and that's how I met Schlack. Through him listening to the fucking show and me talking about him, and high-pitched Will would hit me with various wrestlers and go, you gotta check out this guy named Schlack. You gotta check out this guy named The Carver. And I go, who the fuck is this? And that's how, Shellac became part of XPW. And, listening to the show. So, and he's been there, from day one. And I actually talked to him like I talked to some of the boys of 20 years ago when I would, talk to, I don't know. Well, Webb doesn't count because he worked for me. So I'd see him on a regular basis every day. I'd walk into the edit bay and I'd just be like, I would say a very horrible derogatory name, which was acceptable back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And go, hey, blank, what are you working on? And he would go, hello, Mr. Black. I am editing one of your fine pieces of pornography.
What are you?
Just open up the shit box, volume number 6. And I go, oh, okay. When are you going to work on, the TV show? Well, as soon as you and then he would say a derogatory name for Kevin Kleinrock and his religious heritage and say, when are you and blank, that little blank, going to start the wraparounds? And I'd be like, I don't know. And then Kevin's like, I heard that, Wet. That was this 15,000 square foot building of just pure pandemonium going on a regular basis. Wrestling ring in the back, in the warehouse with the studio set and the students practicing. So, doing their drills. So there I am trying to conduct business and you're just hearing bang, boom, bang. And I sometimes I would fucking walk out there and be like, can you guys shut the fuck up for fucking 20 minutes? I'd walk back in. So then, the late Dynamite D would then have him out of the ring and do drills out on the floor.
Yeah.
So they weren't, banging on the ring. So.
Oh man, that's fucking great. As we're starting to wrap up, because we were talking about with Schlack involved, and I obviously when I saw that you had XPW follow me, I was like, oh shit, and I hit him up, and then he calls me, and then obviously I'm gonna bring it up on my podcast just like how you do. Like, oh man, if everybody, he loves being called Marty. It's his favorite name on the planet. Well, Marty Schlack calls me and he gives me the rundown, like the day, and I didn't even talk to you. I'm just listening to Schlack. For all I know is I'm picking him up and then I'm like, if he would have told me I'm driving to Rochester, I'm like, dude, what? It's a Tuesday. Are you fucking lying to me? Are you picking up drugs? What the fuck is going on? That I am going to Rochester, New York on a fucking Tuesday, I've never been there before, and And then I'm like, I part of me doesn't believe you, and then the other part is, well, fuck it, I guess I got to do it. It adds up. It adds up, And then I get there and I meet you and all that, and it was great. It was a great time and all that. But obviously when he gives me the call, and then after everything came around, I was like, oh wow, I mean, he actually did say something, and I thought this son of a bitch, like, yeah, no, you're my boy, all that type of shit. But anyway, like as it, as we have XPW now, you have this women's tournament coming up, and it's in full blast, man. Like you have this show and it's set. My question, it's like, what do you want? Just a couple more like things. What do you want out of XPW? What's the, what's the short term goal,
the end
and then
game.
what's the long term goal?
I feel like
there's only an end game when it comes to you.
Well, it's funny because I actually have this type of conversation with Miss Kat Martini all the time, because I'm very
a sweetheart, by the way. She is awesome.
Who brought you guys burgers?
Immediately,
like a fucking waitress.
Immediately a queen.
Yeah. She didn't make you guys sign autographs. She brought you guys burgers. Yeah. Like I said, I have this conversation a lot because I'm very OCD-ish, and I'm very big on believe it or not, order. Being organized, but I'm not organized, but repetitious. All of those things. I believe in having a start, finish, and end.
Right.
And I hate having something that's open. And XPW is very open. Back when we were starting XPW back in the 90s, it was there was always an end game. The end game was that was the end game. The end game was getting on TV.
Yeah.
Which we did. I just wasn't part of it, and it changed its name. But Wrestling Society X on MTV was really XPW. It was all of my people. It was the guys that I sold XPW to, and the concept of the X, Wrestling Society X, was the original concept that we had for XPW. And if you look at XPW, the original belt has a big X in the middle. I mean, it was XPW. So basically the dream was realized, except I wasn't part of it. I didn't make any money from it. Nobody kicked me anything. And, it is what it is.
Right.
There's no real end now. Everything's on streaming. And again, back in our day, it was, we're going to be on TV, and then we're going to get a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Well, now everything is a fucking pay-per-view. Now so it's a little different. The concept of, well, what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal would be getting back to a monthly schedule, because I still monthly show, and building to that monthly show, and that monthly show being a payoff of storylines and a revolving mix of people in storylines. That is what we did back in the 80s. It's a formula that still works today. It is what WWE does. It is what AEW does, but nobody else does it. Everybody now does shows for the sake of shows, and
it's dream match,
somebody
dream
that
match,
never wrestled before. And there you go. Kid Osborne against Schlack because nobody's seen it before. Yay. But there's no story. There's nothing to it except they've never wrestled before. Okay, great. And eventually all of these pieces. So for me, it's going back to, and right now we're doing about every 6 weeks, every 7 weeks. It'll be every month. So it'll be that monthly and building the attendance. You know, the last show we had legit, and nobody ever tells real numbers anymore. We had legit 460 paid, and then we probably had another 60 or 70 comp. So we had legit 500 people into that venue. It only holds 700. And just kind of building from there. And keep producing better television, keep producing, buzzworthy storylines, not buzzworthy spots.
Right.
And having fun.
Dude,
and getting back and getting to a place that we never had before, and that is streaming services. We never had that before. The amount of merch that you could pump out today, that back then, and just kind of capitalizing on a lot of that technology that we didn't have back in the 90s, and doing that. Now, what would be the end game? I don't know. I know Cat Martini kind of wants to do a little a la WWE and make kind of movies using the wrestlers, not fuck movies, but like, you know,
like, well,
your movie like that, where you've got the wrestlers, someone like a Schlack, like she's got the script she wrote that's kind of like a Campfire Tales. And it's got, Schlack. She's got, Schlack, Big Joe.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Well, the concept is people, it's almost like a rehab where they go to, where they have to, they have to come face to face with the fears that they have. And then, of course, those people are involved in those fears that they have, and it becomes this. Again, who the fuck knows, bro?
I'm intrigued that I'd be like,
So those are the places that ideally, I know that Martini has ideas for the women's division and for a couple kind of ideas of branching off the women's division. And I know it's not inventing a wheel, because you have things like WOW, and you got Maria Kanellis's kind of woman's thing. But I know that her concept is like a show within a show that involves the women's division, but it's incorporated in a way that we're doing it now. And we've kind of intertwined the storyline of me not wanting a women's division, her wanting the women's division, and me kind of doing whatever I could do.
Like me not wanting to lose half my shit, It's like
yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting kind of storyline. So I don't know. Like I said, wrestling and where we are is different today, because back in my youth, television and pay-per-view was the end game. Now you have that.
Yeah, and it's easier to get on. It's like every show, but I like I mean, personally, I mean, as a wrestling fan, it's like I like stories. You know, that's why I like cutting promos and I like making something out of nothing. Like I had, you know, that a match like with Schlack. I've known him for a long time, and you know, with who he was dating at the time, like I made it part of. I made it into more than a one-off, and that's kind of what I like. I mean, I was like that because it seems to be the the platform. It's like you put two and two together, and then you cut a good enough promo, then guess what? Like things are going to change in the story. That they become a story. Like I did it with Low Life Louie, if you know who he is. You know where, you know, and of course talking to him, it's just that you attack like his family, which is so unheard of. You know, you can't do that. And then you do something like that, and then you create something out of nothing. And there's not just a reason there, and there has to be a reason why you do it. You do it because, you know, that like you think of Schlack, or the way that I look at him is like I see him that he has this cult following, and I just don't get it, and I don't understand it. And then, you know, just what would if this was real life, and then this guy who is a murderer or something like that has this weird cult following, and then I attack not him, but I attack all the people that love him to death because I just don't get why. And then all of a sudden they hate me, and I created a story out of fucking nothing because I just said the right thing. And like stories, you know, that's what gets you. I think that's what gets you, you know, on the next card, you know, rather than just your ability in a ring. But anyway, that's just how it is. And so I like stories. So, you know, the way your concept is what I'm talking about is like, I'm just like, ooh, as a fan, like I'm on board because I want to know, well, what's going to happen in 6 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
Cause I'm so used to that anyway. Like, I mean, as a kid watching Raw, you know, and Raw ends on, you know, Bret Hart in a wheelchair and then Shawn Michaels standing over him, and then they just fucking cut out. And I go, well, what the fuck happened? You know, and then I have to wait until next Monday, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to comprehend wrestling today as far
there's no
as
patience involved anymore.
As far as what, take away the WWE or AEW, but let's just look at it from, you know, shit that we're used to and what we deal with. And runs shows for the sake of fucking running shows. Everybody runs shows so they have content to put on Fight, so they can make sure that they get their monthly check from Fight or their monthly check from IWTV, so that monthly check can go towards doing their next thing. And then out of that thing, they got to pay for their health insurance or their mortgage on their house because that's what they do, and they could get their wife to make the boys sign autograph pictures. Resell them so you can make your car payment. So there is no crafting of a story-driven product because you're just basically, and I always compare porn and wrestling because it's very similar. You're just turning out scenes. So back in our day, you're just turning out scenes, and that's what indie wrestling is. You're turning out scenes. That's it. You're turning out matches that are just seen together, a bunch of fucking matches, so everybody online could go, that was a banger. That was a banger. And that's it. And then you move on to the next one. So you do your New Jersey show, and then you do your fucking Chicago show, and then you do your Detroit show, and you have, you know, Levi Dragonfly do a match with Effie. And then you have Levi do a match with whoever.
It's a very simple thing, and you can see that in, like, you know, there's I know exactly what you mean, and that you want it to be more complex, but obviously the way that it's just like how I said, with gifts are more important than full matches because nobody's really watching all of them. The majority aren't watching all the matches. They're watching the clips of it, the good clips. and the reality is that people don't they think that they want to be complex and that they like good wrestling or whatever. It's like you don't. You just want simplicity because you're simple-minded. But if somebody is more engaging, if they watch an entire show, whether it's like a Walking Dead or like Ozark or some shit, if you're fully engaged, then you're willing to fucking wait, and that's
so
kind of it is.
And to kind of circle back to what you asked me, what I see for XPW, where I want it to go. Ultimately, a presence online, so our streaming service that has our weekly TV show that I can look at and go, okay, 22,000 people a week watch this program, and then 5,000 of them pay $19.95 a month to watch the build-up and the fucking pay-per-view. Well, Rob, why not all 22,000? Because there are a portion of people that aren't going to pay for it, and they'll wait for the clips, and they'll wait for the shit online. Yeah. If I could get a couple thousand people to pay for the monthly product and a certain thousands of people to watch that TV show every week, I would be fucking happy.
Yeah.
I would be happy. And then I would come back on your show and say, all right, that we accomplished part of what I said on your program. We have X amount of thousand people buying the product every month, and we have X amount of thousand people watching the product every week. I don't need 1 million people buying it. Of course I want it, but ultimately that's not what's going to prove success, because right now in our world, having a buys, having 1,000 buys on Fight, having 1,500 buys, you're fucking in the money if you're fucking doing that. So if you could do 5,000 and 6,000 buys on a monthly show, that is a monthly show, not a fan pass for $10.95 and you get 9 of our fucking shows because we're putting out a fucking show every goddamn day. That once a month old school paper, that would be success for me. And I would then say, all right, we're doing something, and we can kind of, exist on this, and we can,
And I don't see why you can't, man. But listen, I see. When I saw that you were coming back and XPW was coming back, like as a fan of XPW, I was excited to just see it. I didn't even think about ever being a little part, and I remember just the car ride, and then me and Schlack already up pretty fucking tuned up in the back seat, and I'm just going yo. I just wrestled for XPW, and he's just looks at me, he's like, yeah, you did, dude. and I think that's fucking awesome, in itself. But I look forward to what everything that's next. And I think that with, just your mind for the business alone, it's I don't see how I can't get to that level at all. There's no reason why it can't. Anything. Really, but to be honest with you, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything against you. As much as there could be one person that just tries to trigger shit. Fuck them. Hope they die. But there's really nothing against you, and I think this is the perfect time for you to come back into wrestling. And then I just want to end it with one question that I had from a fan, and I think, and I'm pretty sure you can guess who it is. And then all they asked was, when you were in prison, did anybody Did anybody ever take your fruit cup?